was a time when the name John D. Rockefeller struck fear into anyone who heard it. As the world's first billionaire and one of the richest people in history, he built Standard Oil into the most powerful monopoly on earth, crushing rivals, seizing control of multiple industries, bribing officials, and waging business like a war. His ruthless tactics and secretive dealings earned him countless enemies. Rivalries with figures like Andrew Carnegie and even fierce clashes with U.S. presidents marked his career. But before becoming the titan of the oil industry, Rockefeller started at the very bottom. His life is one of the rare stories of a person rising from deep poverty to the very peak of wealth and power. At times inspiring and at times chilling, Rockefeller's journey shows what can happen when ambition and greed are pushed to their limits. Born into poverty in 1839, John D. Rockefeller was the first child of peasant farmers in a small town of under 1,000 people. The most mysterious figure in his life was his father, Devil Bill Rockefeller, a man who avoided farm work and dabbled in everything from athletics and ventriloquism to hunting, hypnotism, and even animal training. Once winning a bear, keeping it as a pet, and teaching it tricks. Bill often vanished for weeks or months, only to return in a fine carriage, showering his children with gifts despite their tattered clothes and cold, hungry nights. Unknown to John, Bill was living a double life as Dr. William Livingston, traveling to sell worthless herbal remedies and potions to the desperate. With his father frequently absent, John's mother relied on him to help run the farm, instilling in him deep religious faith, discipline, and a strong work ethic. Even before age 10, he was finding creative ways to earn money, such as raising and selling turkeys. His efforts made a noticeable difference to the family's finances. But when John was 10, his father was accused of sexual assault, forcing the family to flee in disgrace. Rather than change, Bill secretly married another woman in a different state, leaving John to act as the family's unofficial head. After years of moving, the Rockefellers settled in Cleveland, Ohio. By 16, John wanted to attend college, but with 4 siblings and another on the way, and his father absent more than ever, he had to work instead. 2 months before graduation, he left school and began job hunting. Rejected repeatedly for being only 16, he persisted for 6 weeks until a small firm hired him as a bookkeeper after admiring his penmanship. They didn't even tell him his pay, but John was thrilled, and for the rest of his life, he celebrated September 26th, Job Day, as more important than his own birthday. In 1855, John earned just 50 cents a day, but his hard work won him a raise to $300 a year, enough to break free from his father and help his struggling family. Even then, he gave 10% of his income to charity. When a recession hit and one partner quit, John became lead accountant at just 18. Confident and ambitious, he teamed up with chemist Maurice Clark to start Clark & Rockefeller, trading grain, fish, and meat. John's calm maturity earned instant trust, and clients poured in. Lacking capital, they spread word they were seeking $10,000, making banks eager to lend them $5,000. The gamble worked. As the Civil War erupted, business boomed, and Rockefeller, a devout Baptist, cheered for a Union victory. John still had to support his family of 6, so instead of enlisting, he paid $300 for a substitute and even equipped several Union soldiers himself. The war boosted the northern economy, and Cleveland became a key supply hub. Food prices soared, and his produce business quadrupled. In 1862, at just 23, John and Maurice cleared $177,000, over $500,000 today. That same year, John met Samuel Andrews, who had a secret method for refining crude oil into longer-burning, brighter kerosene. using sulfuric acid. With oil newly discovered in Pennsylvania and dubbed black gold, Rockefeller and Clark invested $4,000 to start a refinery as a side venture. It quickly outperformed their produce trade, and within a year, they abandoned food entirely to go all in on oil. But the industry was volatile. Oil was found in only one small part of Pennsylvania, and boomtowns sprang up and vanished overnight as each well ran dry. Oil prices swung wildly, dropping to 10 cents when supply was high and soaring to $14 when wells ran dry. To avoid this chaos, John focused on refining rather than drilling, but the volatility still weighed heavily on the business. In 1865, Maurice Clark had enough and sold his share to John for $72,500, about $1.35 million today. John doubled down, and just as the deal closed, a massive new oil field was discovered in Pennsylvania, erasing fears of scarcity. The following year, with the Civil War over and the northern economy booming, John rebranded as Standard Oil, built a second refinery, and began exporting kerosene to Europe. Realizing he needed a strong partner, he teamed up with Henry Flagler, a man as disciplined and ambitious as himself, but even more ruthless in business. Together, they set out to build an empire. Henry Flagler viewed business like war. The only victory was total destruction of the competition, and John soon embraced the same mindset. As refining became easier and competitors flooded the kerosene market, they sought ways to boost Standard Oil's profits while crippling rivals. One major move was secretly cutting transportation deals with railroads. When the powerful Pennsylvania Railroad abandoned Cleveland, many local refineries fled. But John saw opportunity. The Erie and New York Central Railroads, desperate for business, agreed to give Standard Oil steep discounts, 75% off from Erie, in exchange for 60 daily carloads and a cut from $240 to $165 per barrel with New York Central. These guaranteed shipments benefited both sides, locking in Standard Oil's dominance while keeping the railroads profitable. The secret railroad rebates gave Standard Oil a huge edge, turning Cleveland into the nation's largest refining hub and leaving the Pennsylvania Railroad at a disadvantage. Knowing his transport costs were lower, John started a price war, slashing prices until competitors paying more to ship oil went bankrupt. Once rivals collapsed, he raised prices higher than before. The tactic was legal at the time and wildly profitable, but falling oil prices from oversupply threatened the whole industry. With 90% of refiners losing money, John feared a total collapse and decided the only solution was to build an even more dominant monopoly. By 1872, oil prices had dropped another 25%, threatening the entire industry. John struck a secret deal with his former rival, Pennsylvania Railroad President Tom Scott, creating the South Improvement Company, an alliance between the biggest railroads and select refiners, including Standard Oil. In exchange for shipping exclusively with them, John got a 50% rebate on transport costs. Even better for him, whenever competitors shipped oil, half their fees went directly to Standard Oil through drawbacks. And the railroad secretly fed John detailed data on rival shipments, so he could undercut their prices. Critics called it a blatant power grab, but John insisted it would save the oil industry by wiping out struggling refiners. Public outrage erupted, however, when news broke that freight rates on the nation's top railroads had suddenly doubled, and everyone knew who was behind it. Rumors of an alliance between Tom Scott's Pennsylvania Railroad and John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil sparked mass outrage. Thousands took to the streets, threatening both companies with violence, vandalism, and arson. Protesters hijacked Standard shipments, spilled the oil, and ripped up Pennsylvania railroad tracks. The final blow came when oil producers staged a boycott of the South Improvement Company, SIC. Without crude oil, Rockefeller's refineries ground to a halt, and within 2 months, the SIC collapsed. The failure was humiliating, but Rockefeller remained unfazed. If he couldn't dominate the industry through secret deals, he would do it openly, and by force. His goal: bring as many refineries under Standard Oil as possible. Ironically, the SIC debacle had sown a new fear in the industry. Whispers of a secret cartel between railroads and refiners persisted, even though no such deal existed. Many refiners, terrified that Standard might still enjoy hidden advantages, panicked. In just 6 weeks, an episode later known as the Cleveland Massacre, Rockefeller intimidated 22 of Cleveland's 26 refiners into selling at a fraction of their true value. Many were already losing money, and Rockefeller used Standard's healthy finances to prove he could outlast them. Sellers had 2 options: sign a contract banning them from the oil business forever, or join Standard Oil. Most chose to join, bringing some of the brightest minds in the industry under Rockefeller's control. Standard upgraded all new refineries with the latest technology, slashing costs and boosting efficiency. By mid-1873, Rockefeller controlled Cleveland's oil trade and could ship over 1 million barrels of kerosene annually. Then came disaster. On September 18, 1873, Black Thursday, bank failures triggered a 6-year national recession. Oil prices collapsed, not from oversupply, but from a lack of demand. Standard shut down 4 of its 6 Cleveland plants, and within a year, a barrel of oil sold for just 48 cents, cheaper than the same amount of water. Across the industry, miners, railroads, and refiners all faced the same grim prospect: bankruptcy. Thanks to Standard Oil's careful finances, strong bank credit, and modern refineries, Rockefeller was one of the few able to profit during the recession. Seeing opportunity in crisis, he expanded beyond Cleveland, targeting struggling refineries in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and New York. Reluctant sellers were pressured. He'd buy up all refining equipment, block shipping routes, or push railroads to raise rivals' costs until they neared bankruptcy, then acquire them cheaply. By the recovery, Standard Oil controlled half of Pittsburgh's refining capacity, Philadelphia's largest refineries, and a strong foothold in New York. Rockefeller also built an extensive pipeline network, reducing dependence on railroads and slashing costs, earning Standard Oil the nickname the Octopus. But this put him in direct conflict with Tom Scott of the Pennsylvania Railroad, who retaliated by building his own pipelines and refineries. Rockefeller countered by cutting prices, shifting shipments to other railroads, and convincing competitors to lower freight rates, devastating the Pennsylvania Railroad. This triggered massive layoffs and wage cuts, leading to one of the most violent labor strikes in U.S. history. Eventually, Scott surrendered. Rockefeller struck a deal, guaranteeing shipments in exchange for secret rebates, competitor data, and fees per barrel, giving him unprecedented control over the industry and railroads. By then, Standard Oil commanded 90% of U.S. refining. Scott never recovered, dying shortly after, fueling a personal rivalry between Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, Scott's protege. Despite his vast power, Rockefeller lived modestly, avoiding the lavish lifestyle of other tycoons, quietly controlling his empire from New York while dominating the oil industry. Rockefeller seemed poised to relax and enjoy his empire's success, but the oil industry was shifting fast. Edison's electric light threatened kerosene demand, and in 1885, a massive oil find in Ohio sparked fears of oversupply and price collapse. While Standard Oil executives panicked, Rockefeller stayed calm. He saw opportunity. Until then, Standard focused on refining, but Ohio's discovery pushed Rockefeller toward vertical integration, controlling everything from wells to pipelines to retail. He moved quickly, buying land, drilling, and building infrastructure. Ohio's crude had a foul odor and sold for just 15 cents a barrel. But instead of quitting like others, Rockefeller hired chemists who removed the smell, giving him a monopoly on this cheaper oil. This advantage paid off when huge oil fields opened in Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, and California. With gasoline, once a waste, suddenly in demand for the growing automobile market, Standard Oil thrived, even during the 1893 Depression. With his fortune growing, Rockefeller stepped back from daily operations, but struggled with personal investments. He hired Frederick Gates, a former minister, who transformed his wealth through strategic investments. Around the same time, his son, John Jr., began learning business under Gates' mentorship. Frederick taught Jr. to invest and negotiate, turning John's weak portfolio into a profit machine. John soon pushed them to buy into other industries, most notably the Mesabi Range in Minnesota, home to a massive high-quality iron ore deposit. This alarmed steel tycoon Andrew Carnegie, as it threatened his dominance. John undercut Carnegie by selling ore cheaply to his rivals, sparking rumors he'd build a steel mill. Carnegie, facing dwindling iron supplies, struck a deal. He'd buy 600,000 tons of ore annually from John and ship it, along with his own ore, via John's railroads, in return for secret rebates. Both agreed not to invade each other's territory, profiting while hurting competitors. The partnership drew Wall Street's attention, but banker J.P. Morgan saw an even bigger opportunity, merging their interests into U.S. Steel. Negotiating with John's son Jr., Morgan paid $88.5 million in stock for the Mesabi mines, later folding Carnegie Steel into U.S. Steel, the first billion-dollar corporation. John's stakes soared in value, while Standard Oil grew stronger from the auto boom. With wealth across industries, John quietly stepped back, but failing to announce his retirement would later cause him trouble. Even in retirement, John D. Rockefeller still owned about 30% of Standard Oil, and the booming auto industry was making him richer than ever. But the company's ruthless business tactics had tarnished its image, and President Theodore Roosevelt saw it as the perfect target in his anti-monopoly campaign. Roosevelt's push was fueled by journalist Ida Tarbell, whose family had been ruined by Rockefeller years earlier. Her exposé revealed Standard's secret deals, political bribes, and Rockefeller's personal scandals, turning public dislike into outright hatred. When Roosevelt won re-election, he launched the largest lawsuit in U.S. history against Standard Oil, accusing it of monopolizing the industry, predatory pricing, and corporate espionage. In 1911, the Supreme Court ordered Standard to be broken into 34 separate companies. Many saw it as Rockefeller's downfall, but it made him wealthier than ever. He still owned a quarter of the company, and when the new stocks tripled in value, his fortune soared. What was meant to be his ruin became the most profitable event of his career. By the time John D. Rockefeller was close to becoming the world's first billionaire, Andrew Carnegie was already out of the race. Standard Oil was gone, Rockefeller was retired, but his energy, unstoppable. Now his mission wasn't profit, it was philanthropy. He believed he was a soldier of God, entrusted with wealth to help mankind. And he meant it, giving at least 10% of his income his whole life, often in secret. In 1913, he launched the Rockefeller Foundation with his son and advisor. Its goal? Transform medicine and education forever. His donations funded labs, wiped out diseases like hookworm and malaria, and built hundreds of schools, 2 of which became world-class research institutions. By the end, Rockefeller had personally given away $540 million, billions in today's money. His family and foundation added billions more, still giving to this day. But here's the twist. Rockefeller's generosity was matched only by the ruthlessness that built his empire. Was he a saint? A villain? Maybe both. One thing's certain, John D. Rockefeller died at 97, not just as the richest man of his time, but one of the most fascinating figures in history.